All right. So we said that in order to make peace between the good and the evil inclinations in one's heart, what a person needs to do is a person needs to learn Poiskim, because the root of all disagreements and discord comes from the machlokes, the kedusha of Chazal when they are debating what the halacha should be. So when a person learns Poskim, with this he is making peace in his own heart, and anything that he cannot understand, there he should lean on Emunah alone. In other words, you can't achieve the kind of Emunah that you need. Just one second. You can't achieve the kind of Emunah that you need just by saying, you know something, I'm going to just rely on Emunah, and that's it. It's better than just relying on one seichel. Nevertheless, a person needs to have das, he needs to think, he needs to learn, because without going through the process of reconciling the machlokas of Chazal, which fixes the machlokas in a person's heart, that machlokas will remain. And only when you're actually learning Poskim and you settle that machlokas in your own heart, then when you get to the edge of the things that you can't understand, then you lean on Emunah. Because Emunah is always standing on Das. Emunah is always standing on Emes. Because without Emes, you can believe in all the nonsense in the world. There's nothing more to say about that. There's not more to talk about that. So the Emunah you have to believe in what the Emes is. But nevertheless, Emes in itself, that thing which you believe, which you take as Emes, is also based on Emunah. So we're getting into this kind of revolving door that Emunah depends on Emes, which in itself, the Emes itself depends on Emunah, which depends on Emes, and you understand, and ad nauseum, it just continues. So Nosson says, being that Emes rests on Emunah, and Emunah rests on Emes, so Nosson asks, so how will a person ever start the process? You can't start from there. You can't start from Emunah. So where do you start? So Nosson says, you start from a combination of both. And the combination of Emes and Emunah is a svara. Let's explain, what does it mean? It means you look objectively from afar. You don't know what the emes is. You don't know what it is that you need to believe yet. Sorry. But you just look at what makes sense. What is befitting to believe? It's obvious that this world did not make itself. It's obvious that such amazing perfection did not come into being without Kadosh Baruch Hu. It's obvious that this should be the proper emunah. This is what you should believe. In a Kadosh Baruch Hu, in the Torah and the Tzaddikim. When it comes to the Torah, Ma'amad Har Sinai was unlike any revelation of any religion on earth ever. This is the only time HaKadosh Baruch Hu revealed himself to human beings when there were witnesses around. There are plenty of people that claim that HaKadosh Baruch Hu revealed himself to them and gave him a set of instructions. From Peter on the way to Damascus, and from Islam, or whatever his name is, Smith from the Mormons, whatever it is. It's always one person. To the Eastern religion, it's only one. It's one person that got a revelation, and there was nobody there. You have to trust his word for it. The only instance in history ever that HaKadosh Baruch Hu revealed himself to the people with witnesses, both Yitzias Mitzrayim and Nesinas Sater and Har Sinai. On Har Sinai, there were over 3 million Jews and almost like 3.5 million of Egyptians that converted. So the very beginning of Emunah is something which is not open to any interpretation. We don't have to rely on faith to know that Kadosh Baruch Hu revealed himself to Am Yisrael and gave him the Torah. Because you have a whole nation that told their children that they saw Kadosh Baruch Hu on Har Sinai, and he gave him the Torah. It does not stand to any kind of reason or lack thereof that a whole nation of millions of people will altogether come to one conclusion. Something? Here's what we're going to do. We're going to lie to our children that we stood on Har Sinai and HaKadosh Baruch Hu gave us a Torah. Can't be. And their children cannot invent, something. My father told me that they stood on Har Sinai and they got the Torah. It can't be. People won't invent them. One person, okay. A whole nation. So the whole thing is based on a completely reliable witnesses, both Yitzias Mitzrayim and Matan Torah. There is no parallel episode ever throughout history of HaKadosh Baruch Hu revealing himself to human beings when there are witnesses around. So the basis of Emunah, we already have. Now, the basis of this Emunah is not just Emunah in the Kadosh Baruch Hu, but it is also Emunah in the Tzaddik. V'yaminu b'Hashem, they believed in Hashem. Uve Moshe Avdon, Moshe Rabbeinu. So you have Emunah in the Kadosh Baruch Hu, Emunah in the Torah that He gave us, Emunah in the Tzaddik through whom we receive the Torah. This is the basis of Emunah Yisrael, without any ifs, ands, or buts. Upon that, you'll learn the Das, you'll learn what the Kadosh Baruch Hu gave us. How do we learn this? So in the beginning, in the time of Moshe Rabbeinu, there was no machlekes, there was no problem. Moshe Rabbeinu said exactly what Kadosh Baruch Hu told him, finished. It wasn't open to any interpretation, or there wasn't any disagreement. When who could disagree with Moshe Rabbeinu? When Moshe Rabbeinu passed away, because of the mourning period that the people mourned Moshe Rabbeinu, Am Yisrael lost either 300 halachas or 400 halachas, I'm not sure which number it is, to the point that Am Yisrael was extremely upset at Yeshua ben Nun. What do you mean? You are our leader. You're the one, who is in touch with, the go-between us and the Kadosh Baruch Hu. You tell us what He wants. And how can you not know, what these 300 halachas are? So, up to the point that Kadosh Baruch Hu says, listen, go engage them in war. They'll be busy, but nevertheless, Kadosh Baruch Hu already gave the 13 codes, which the Torah, you can dash in the Torah and you can find out what the halacha is. So Asniel ben Knaz was the son-in-law of Kalev ben Yefuna. Kalev ben Yefuna was the one of the spies that together with Yeshua ben Nun said that the spies were lying and Eretz Yisrael is very, very good. And B'schar this, HaKadosh Baruch Hu said he will go into Eretz Yisrael. He gets Yerusha, he gets Hebron, and he had a daughter. Her name was Achsa, and he married off to Asniel ben Knaz, who was the biggest Talmid Chacham of the generation. And now Moshe Rabbeinu wasn't there to give them undisputed halachas anymore. Asniel ben Knaz was able to learn the halachas from the Torah through the 13 midos that you darshan the Torah with. Now, that continued. Halacha like this continued until the Churban Abayis, and Torah was forgotten. A lot of Torah was forgotten. What's the halacha, became forgotten, and the Mishnah was written, and then the Gemara is written, and then you have, the Geonim, and then you have the Rishonim, and then you have the Achrayim, then you have the latter day Talmidei Chachamim, and up to the poskim of today. But Lamaisa, the point is that Emunah rests on emes, and emes must rest on Emunah. Any mathematician will tell you the basis for all geometry, is the axiom. And upon this, it's something that you take for granted that it's true because it makes sense that it's true, but you can't prove it. That is the svara. This is the axiom upon which all the knowledge is built. So when you get to that, you get to such a muna that you have already went through learning poskim. You already made things very clear. At that point in time, you get to such a muna that your eating alone is achieving a revelation of Kodesh Baruch Hu on the highest level of panim bepanim, face to face. Face to face is the highest level of Emunah. I'm sorry, this is the highest level of revelation. I mean, when you see a friend of yours, okay, it can be that you are facing him, but he has his back to you. In which case, maybe you'll recognize that that's your friend, maybe you won't. But even if you do, you only recognize who he is, but you won't recognize what's going on inside him. What kind of mood he's in, or whatever, you won't be able to tell unless you are facing one another, face to face. So the greatest expression and exposure of Kodesh Baruch Hu to the world is in a level of face to face, in which we are facing Hashem and Hashem is facing us, and we are connecting to one another. We know everything there is to know, kivyochel, with a degree of exposure. And when there is this tikkun, this spiritual tikkun of Yichud Kusha B'Chur Shintei, means that the Kadosh Baruch Hu is evident in this world, and the greater the yichud, the tikkun, the spiritual tikkun is achieved, the more indisputable is the revelation of a Kadosh Baruch Hu in this world. Okay. So we already said that through learning Paiskim, a person is able to know Kadosh Baruch Hu with a complete heart. There's no longer problems between Yitzhahara, Yitzhahara, they live in peace. And a person, knows the answer to those questions, those, dilemmas, or whatever it is, that there's an answer to. And a person needs to strengthen himself in Emunah. And when a person has Emunah b'shleimus, he's zeicher to purify the food that he's eating, to eat such kedusha, from the stranglehold that of the bad in them, and then that achieves Yichud Kusha B'Chur Shintei, this gewaldige spiritual tikkun. And now the Rebbe is going to get into, how can a person be mechazik himself, strengthen himself in the Emunah, and be saved from questions that have no answer. How do I know which questions I can answer? Which questions that have no answer. So the answer is that the Iker Shleimus v'Kishute Emunah, the main perfection and the jewelry, the of the Emunah, in order for the person to strengthen himself in Emunah and be saved from kashas that have no answer, then the answer, what a person needs to do, is hainu lekarev daika hamiruchakim, to bring closer those who are far away. Yifchina says in the future, what's going to happen? Then I will turn around to the nations. Safa of Rura, a clear language. Likra kulam b'shem Hashem, that all will call in the name of Kadosh Baruch Hu. In other words, vafilu akum, even the goyim, will get closer to emunos Israel, to the beliefs of Israel. L'avdoi shechem echad, and to serve Kadosh Baruch Hu in unison, one helping the other. Because emunah, the fact that you alone believe, that is not enough. You need to be mekar of people who are distant. Interestingly enough, what we will learn on this particular thing, the Rebbe says in quite a few places, Torah Yud Zayin, and in other Torahs, that the Shleimus HaMizbeach is through Kirur V'Choikim, and a lot of different places. Beinu says that the final, the gilding of the lily, as it were, of the Emunah is by bringing those who up to that particular point in time were far away. Interestingly enough, in none of these places that the Kadosh Baruch Hu is saying that, does it say that you actually need to go out and speak to people. Rabbeinu does not say that. What Rabbeinu does say is the way that you are bringing people who are currently far, to bring them close, is by working on yourself. Self-improvement. When you improve yourself, you bring about that those who are far come closer. The reason why dafka those who are far need to come close for the emunah to be, beautified and complete, is because those who are close to Kadosh Baruch Hu, those who work on themselves, the fact that they recognize the Kadosh Baruch Hu and His kingdom, it's always a big deal, but it's not that big a deal. As much as when someone was being very, very far from the Kadosh Baruch Hu, and he comes and he admits that the Kadosh Baruch Hu, that Hashem is Elohim, that's a perfection of the Emunah. Then the true Das can come down. We see that explicitly from Yisrael. Yisrael wasn't just a Gentile. Yisrael was the big kahuna of all idolatry. Every single one. He was the Pope, he was the Dalai Lama, he was the Dalai Kacha, he went through all the different religions in the world. He was the chief high priest of every religion. So the Zohar says, when Israel comes, and he says, Ataya dat Godol Hashem mikol Elokim, now I know that Hashem is greater than all the deities in the world. It says the Zohar, at that point, the name of HaKadosh Baruch Hu has risen and gone up above and below. Am Yisrael knew HaKadosh Baruch Hu. Baruch Hu took him out from Mitzrayim. That was not enough. Yisrael had to come. He was the furthest person from HaKadosh Baruch Hu in the world. When he came, and he admitted that Hashem or Elokim, immediately follows that is Matan Torah. Then the Emunah is b'shleimus, then the Emunah is perfect. And when the Emunah is perfect, then the Torah can be given. The Das can go inside, can come in. That Shleimus Emunah brings about a tremendous influx of Das. B'ezrat Hashem, we will stop here. And tomorrow, Mitzvah Hashem, we will probably repeat this, a little this way, a little that way. So this will sink in, B'ezrat Hashem, a little bit better. So I wish you